In a time when American political discourse is increasingly shaped by the rise of independent media figures, one of the most iconic names in the realm of late-night commentary, Jon Stewart, has made a powerful statement that pushes back against the common narrative being touted by many pundits. The notion that the Democratic Party needs its own Joe Rogan to appeal to a wider, often more conservative, or populist audience has been circulating for some time. However, Stewart, who has long been known for his biting social commentary and willingness to challenge the status quo, dismisses this idea, making it clear that those calling for such a figure are people who have never really listened to Rogan. Stewart's comments are a direct challenge to the rise of podcast culture and the increasing prominence of figures like Joe Rogan, who has arguably become one of the most influential voices in modern media. With a massive following on platforms like Spotify, Rogan's ability to attract millions of listeners and guests from across the political spectrum has made him an undeniable force. His style, long-form, unfiltered conversations that delve into a variety of topics, has resonated with a large swath of the American public. But what does this mean for the Democratic Party? Do they need their own Joe Rogan to connect with voters who feel disenfranchised or skeptical of traditional political discourse? The rise of Joe Rogan, a new kind of media influence. Before diving into Stewart's critique, it is important to understand why Joe Rogan has become such a prominent figure in American media. Joe Rogan, a former comedian and martial artist, initially gained widespread attention through his podcast, The Joe Rogan Experience Rogan's brand of conversation, spanning everything from health and fitness to politics, philosophy, and science, attracted a diverse array of guests, including scientists, comedians, actors, authors, and even politicians. His open-minded, no-holds-barred approach to interviews, often coupled with his willingness to entertain controversial ideas, has helped him build a loyal following. But what truly sets Rogan apart in the landscape of contemporary media is his connection with an audience that is often disillusioned with traditional media and politics. Many of Rogan's listeners are skeptical of mainstream narratives, including those put forth by both the left and the right. His podcast serves as a platform for free speech, where guests are given the space to express a range of opinions, some of which would be considered taboo or politically incorrect by many in the mainstream media. This unique blend of openness and defiance of conventional norms has helped Rogan cultivate a brand of populist appeal, which is what has led some to suggest that the Democratic Party needs to find its own version of Rogan. The argument goes something like this: if Rogan can captivate millions of listeners who may not identify with traditional left-leaning ideologies, then the Democratic Party should find a way to create a similar figure who can speak to those alienated voters, particularly in swing states or among younger voters who feel disconnected from mainstream politics. Jon Stewarts Counterpoint: they haven't really listened to him. Jon Stewart's response to this idea is one of skepticism. During interviews and public appearances, Stewart has made it clear that he doesn't believe Democrats should follow the template of Joe Rogan. In fact, he sees this as a fundamental misunderstanding of what makes Rogan's success possible. "It's all these people that have never really listened to him," Stewart said, emphasizing that those advocating for a Democratic Joe Rogan are missing the nuances of Rogan's appeal. Stewart's critique is multifaceted, touching on issues of political authenticity, media consumption, and the nature of the political discourse in America. First, Stewart argues that Rogan's appeal is not necessarily rooted in his ability to speak to the political middle or to appeal to disaffected voters. Rather, it is rooted in his authenticity and his ability to connect with his audience through a personal, conversational style that feels more genuine than the typical, scripted nature of political discourse. The thing about Rogan, Stewart explains, is that he's not trying to be a politician. He's not pretending to be anything other than who he is. That's why people are drawn to him. This sense of authenticity is something that cannot be easily replicated, Stewart contends. Rogan's success is not simply about his politics, but about the way he engages with ideas, often without any regard for political correctness or conventional thinking. For the Democratic Party to try to copy this formula would be misguided. as it would risk creating a manufactured version of something that relies on true personal conviction. You can't just make a Democrat Rogan, Stewart says. It has to be real. If it's not authentic, people will see through it immediately. The appeal of authenticity. Stewart's focus on authenticity reflects a larger trend in American political culture. Over the past several decades, voters have become increasingly distrustful of traditional political figures, viewing them as out of touch, insincere, or beholden to special interests. The rise of figures like Rogan and former President Donald Trump can be seen as a reaction to this dissatisfaction with conventional politics. Both Rogan and Trump have built large followings in part because they speak in ways that feel unvarnished, unfiltered, and unscripted. They offer a sense of being real, even if their views are controversial or polarizing. In contrast, the Democratic Party, at least in its more institutional form, is often associated with a more measured, cautious, and sometimes self-censoring approach to public discourse. This may have alienated certain segments of the electorate who are tired of hearing politicians speak in sanitized, focus group-tested language. The idea behind creating a Democratic Joe Rogan is to provide an alternative to this kind of polished rhetoric, someone who can speak directly and without pretense to the people who feel ignored or misunderstood by traditional political elites. However, Stewart suggests that the key to engaging these voters isn't necessarily about copying Rogan's style, but rather about embracing a more honest and direct form of communication that reflects the true values of the party. Democrats, in his view, should focus less on imitating Rogan and more on being honest with their own base and with the electorate as a whole. The real solution isn't to find someone who can mimic Rogan's style. Stewart says, it's about being true to what you believe in and finding a way to communicate that effectively. The danger of false authenticity. Stewart's skepticism about the idea of a Democratic Joe Rogan also touches on the potential danger of creating a false or hollow version of authenticity. In an age where almost anyone can build a platform or gain a following, there is a risk that political figures or media personalities will try to co-opt the Rogan brand without truly understanding or embracing the substance behind it. This could lead to the creation of a media figure who only superficially resembles Rogan's appeal but lacks the depth or substance that made Rogan compelling in the first place. Moreover, Stewart raises the concern that a Democratic version of Rogan might inadvertently play into the same populist rhetoric that has contributed to the rise of figures like Trump. Rogan, for all his praise of free speech and willingness to engage with controversial ideas, has at times been criticized for giving a platform to fringe voices, conspiracy theorists, and individuals with extremist views. If the Democratic Party were to follow the same path, they risk undermining their own credibility and legitimacy. Thank you very much for being with us so far. To get new interesting news, please subscribe to our channel. Until then, stay well, stay healthy. Thank you.